everybody, welcome. And I can say it, summer is over and we are back. It's been so long and we have got a great episode for you today. As always, I am Wade, aka ProfNoctis, and I'm here with Evan. What's up, Evan?
Hey, everybody. Excited for this one.
And today we have with us as part of our hosting team, we've got Nick Smith. You probably know him from some of our Magic the Gathering content and our amazing intro that he designed. So what's up, Nick?
How's it going?
And we are especially excited today because we have the one and the only Magic the Gathering guru himself, Gavin Verhey. Gavin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, so excited to be here, and thanks for having me on. You know, what's better than getting to talk about Magic with some great people? So let's do it.
I'm so excited about this because, I am so new to Magic the Gathering. You and I crossed paths during your, I don't know, I would call it a global international launch tour. You jet set it all over the place. But we met, I think, in LA when you were pitching all the Final Fantasy stuff. And so that's where our paths crossed. And I'm so excited to get to talk to you about this and especially some of the Final Fantasy collaboration.
Yeah, it was so cool to meet you there. And you're absolutely right, man. It was a total whirlwind global press tour. I was all over the country and traveled around the world a little bit talking about the set, which is really great because it was such a meaningful set for me. I grew up playing Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 1 was the first game I ever purchased, or at least convinced my parents to purchase for me. And I played
the first game you ever purchased?
First game,
or the game
purchased, yeah.
Wow. Usually people are like Mario and then we graduate to Final Fantasy, but that's awesome.
There were some other games that we already had for the NES,
Sure.
But this was the first one. I was like, Mom, Dad, I heard about this game. I read about it in Nintendo Power. Gotta go, and we gotta get this game. And
Nintendo Power, you're bringing back all the nostalgia for me right now.
Yeah, for sure. I have a lot of those issues still at home, locked away. But so it really was a big piece of me in my childhood playing Final Fantasy. And so to get to bring it to life with Magic, of course I wanted to go everywhere and talk about it and, share the incredible journey it was making the set, which took nearly 5 years. We started in almost 5 years before the set came out. So it was a long journey to get there and a lot of hard work from our teams, a lot of great collaboration with Square Enix. And I'm really proud of the result we came out with. So we'll dig into all that and more today. There's a little teaser for everyone out there listening, but it really has been a big part of my life. And I'm so glad I got to be a part of this whole process.
Well, absolutely just delighted to have you here. And we're going to definitely get into all of that. For everybody tuning in, one of the things that we like to do is we like to talk about some of the origins and kind of the background of all of our guests. So we're going to get some of that. And then we're going to get into some of the deep dive above my level of play stuff with Nick. Nick is going to be our resident Magic expert. And I'm just going to take notes because, y'all, I am getting stomped in Commander and Arena. I was part of a charity event a few weeks ago, and I just got completely destroyed. So I'm here also as a student, not just as ProfNoctis.
We're going to get you there, man. You're going to make it.
We can make it happen.
But I'm having fun, right? And that's what matters.
That's the important part.
That's the spirit of the game.
So with that, Gavin, we would love to know a little bit about kind of how did you get to be kind of all things Magic? When did you start playing? What got you into it? And what led into this whole career for you?
Yeah, well, we got to reset the clocks a little bit to the year 2001. So I grew up playing games. I always loved games, video games, card games. I played all kinds of board games with my grandparents and parents and brother, who were all instrumental in me loving games the way I do now. But in 2001, I was at a Wizards of the Coast game store. There used to be official Wizards game stores. And the person behind the counter asked my mom, she's like, hey, your kid seems to love games. You might want to try Magic. And my mom asked me, hey, do you want to try this Magic game? And I didn't know that might be this most important question to answer in my life. But I said yes. And, here I am now. So I started playing in 2001 when I was 10 years old. And then by the time I was 11, I decided, I had my mind made up, I wanted to be a Magic card designer. That was what I was going to do. I wanted to go design Magic cards. And I grew up in Seattle, and Wizards was nearby, still is nearby. So I always kind of knew it was in my backyard. And I went to a local event and a pre-release. and the vice president of game design was there, Randy Bueller. And I went up to him at 11 years old, and I was like, all right, Randy, I'm ready. Like, I've been thinking about it. I think I can do this whole card design thing. Just bring me on the team, And what do I need to do? And he looks at me really seriously, and he's like, okay, kid, you're going to need 2 things. The first thing you're going to need is a college degree. And my heart just sinks. I'm 11 years old. It could take forever to get one of those. You kidding me? Like, what's up with that? Can't I start now? But the second thing he says is you should be really good at magic without bringing people on that know magic really well. And I was like, I don't know about this whole college degree thing, but pro magic player, like I could do that. That's easy, no problem. And so I dedicated myself to those 2 things. And I played a lot of magic and kept getting better and improving and working on it with me and my brother. And when I was 15, I qualified. I started playing pro magic. And then when I was 16, I started college. So I started college a couple years early. I used my pro magic play to help actually pay for my college education. And I graduated when I was 20. And within a year, I was picked up by Wizards.
Wow.
And so I started at Wizards when I was 21 years old. I've been there ever since. That's 14 years ago. Or I started as an intern, and now I'm principal designer on Magic. There's this, I'm an English major, so I always think about books and literature. And Ernest Hemingway, of course, one of the all-time greats. He has this quote I like in one of his short stories where one of the characters is asked, how did it happen? And the character replies, gradually and all at once. And that's how it feels for me sometimes, right? It was like this very gradual thing and like a lot of very tiny bits of work and playing Magic and having this big aim slowly, and then even getting here, just like slowly working on things. So eventually things start happening all at once. And, one success led to another. Also one failure led to like learning as well. I think that failure is just as important as successes and how much you can learn and grow. And now, 14 years later, after being at Wizards and almost 25 years later, after starting to play Magic, I'm here now getting to talk with all of you. So it's been a long journey here, but I look forward to many more years to come because I really love what I do, and it's a really incredible place to work.
The way that you just said that, like I work with college students every day of my life at this intersection point between who they've been, who they want to be. And I love that phrase. I've quoted it a few times. What is it from? Is it from The Sun Also Rises? Is that the right Hemingway?
Yeah, I remember the quote without the story. It's very it's a bad English major in me. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
But I do love that quote.
How did it happen? Gradually and then suddenly. And I think that really encapsulates so much of just anything, right? Because like it doesn't happen until you're like deep in it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm there. And so many of my students have that realization. I really appreciate you saying that. Did you ever get to follow up on that conversation you had as an 11-year-old, go into the company and say, hey, I did it?
Well, yeah, I mean, not only have I told that story certainly a few times before, but Randy, who I talked to when I was 11, he's still active in the Magic scene. Wow. I've met him. We've hung out. He's even been contracted to work on some of our projects. So I've actually had the chance to work with him on Magic, which is pretty wild. So things really come full circle there.
It's amazing.
So if you could explain for our audience just briefly what the principal game designer of Magic does, like what your responsibilities are, that would be, I think, really helpful. And then just to give you a heads up where we're headed, when you say that everything happens gradually, but then kind of all at once, I'm also really interested in the process that goes on for you. Like, what did you learn throughout that process? What is the patience that it took to wait? And maybe you feel like you didn't have to wait very long, being able to kind of graduate college early. And it seems like you were on a bit of an accelerated and ambitious schedule. But there's still things that develop inside of you that you grew personally that helped you become the person that could succeed in this role of principal game designer in the way that you have with the longevity that you have. So what is it exactly that you're doing as a principal game designer? And talk a little bit about some of those things that were developed and cultivated in you that have really served you well in the lessons that you've learned throughout this journey, now that you've been doing it for how many years?
Yeah, 14 years. Yeah.
Yeah, now that you've been doing it for 14 years. So what is it that you do as a principal game designer, and what do you think those lessons that you learned and those character traits that you developed really have helped you to really acclimate to the role and be successful?
Yeah, it's a great question. It looks, game designing and working on Magic looks a little bit differently for everybody, right? Everyone has their own kind of path to how they got here and has their own job responsibilities and duties. I'll talk a little bit about what I do, but know that so much of my job and what I love about it actually is that it's always different. It's always evolving. Sometimes I'll get handed projects that are fresh and new and asked to run with them. And I can talk more about those later maybe. But
Okay.
in my day-to-day, I focus on a few different things. The first is leading Magic sets. So usually we'll have a project that I'm leading at any given time. For example, Magic the Gathering, Final Fantasy, but there are other things I've led, many other sets in the past that I've led, Battlebond and Mystery Booster and Commander decks of all kind of shapes and sizes. I could go on. So I'll be leading those projects. And what that entails is basically maintaining the card file, designing the cards and mechanics, interfacing with other teams to make sure that the art's coming in right or the marketing is going to be going in the right direction. I want to be clear that I'm not the only person working on this. We have an amazing team here. And on every single set that we make, there might be a lead designer, me, but we'll have 3, 4, 5 other designers also on the team designing cards. So it's really a group activity. It's a very collaborative environment here at Wizards, and I'm really fortunate to get to work with such great people. So I work a lot on that. I'm also kind of one of the main Commander stakeholders in the building. Looked into all the conversations around the Commander format. And for anyone out there who doesn't know, Commander is a 4-player multiplayer way of playing Magic that's really grown in the past 10 to 15 years. Be the most popular way to play Magic in the world. You can play 100-card decks, sync only one copy of every card. It's quite different from a traditional 60-card Magic. And it's going to be quite popular, and I help manage the group that leads the design of Commander here. So help set the vision, make sure that all the decks stay aligned with each other, all the releases are working well. And I work a lot with our other teams that are facing on that. So that's a big thing that I focus on. I, of course, just have plenty of standing meetings where I chat with people. I do a lot of reviewing of card sets and card files to help make sure that everything goes out as high of quality as possible. And I could go on about the day-to-day, but what's interesting about me is in addition to all of this, the day-to-day design work that I do and all the different ways that I touch, over the years, I've also kind of become, I guess I would say, a face for Magic, right? I just travel around, do a lot of events. This very interview, talking with you all now, I go to our conventions and I do panels and signings and photo ops and all that kind of stuff where I get to talk design with people. I get to have big speaking opportunities, which we're very fortunate to be able to do. And I'm also quite active on social media. So I have a YouTube channel called Good Morning Magic, where I post videos about how we design Magic. I'm active on almost every form of social media that is big enough to be popular. So I'm very much like active in the Magic sphere at all times, and that is in a way a part of my job as well. Although a lot of it is just fun, and I enjoy interacting with the Magic community. But so yeah, it is a lot, and I do every day at work. I'll come in and there's something new and interesting to tackle, or some exciting wrinkle to hit, and I feel very fortunate to work on Magic because a lot of other games, like it's just you work on a game for a long time, you release it, and then the game is kind of over. With Magic, it's just this never-ending cycle of something new to work on and a new problem to tackle, and how do we use all the what we've learned over the years and years and years to apply towards something new that we're making. I've kind of become one of the default people to hand like the weird one-off projects too, which I personally really enjoy. It's the thing that I've put up for myself. They'll come to me and be like, Gavin, we're going to do something strange. You're going to figure it out what it is. And I'm like, cool, great, exciting. And it's really fun to cook up a product from scratch. Like Mystery Booster is a product I'm very proud of. If you're out there and you don't know what that is, Mystery Booster is basically a set full of 1,800 reprint Magic cards. If a reference to a normal Magic set is about 250, 300 cards, something like that. So this is 1,800 cards, so much larger than normal, with all kinds of weird print treatments and even some like hand-drawn cards in there. The idea that you could open up a pack and find anything and everything. And the idea was to create this like really unique booster opening experience that would create for a really fun draft format where you open the cards and play with them right there. It makes you feel like anything could be in there, like a love letter to Magic history.
I'm in danger.
That was just being like, hey, we have an idea. We want to do something cool at conventions, figure it out. And then I've morphed into this product that people love and is beloved now. We've done 2 different editions of.
Cool.
So again, working on a lot of the weird stuff is pretty fun for me too. To the other question, just take a breath, move on to your other question.
Yeah, it's a double barrel question. That's illegal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you give me a question, I'll just walk with it for ages. So if you got to cut me off, you let me know. But I feel like one of the things that's so cool about Magic, one of our things that Magic has that almost no other game does, is history. And history to this degree. We have over 30 years of Magic history, which if you're coming into the game right now, it's a little daunting, sure, But it's also so cool that as you get into it, you can discover things you never even heard of, right? You can hear tales, you can hear stories, you can like go find an old card that fits your commander deck perfectly. That sense of discovery is something we have. And no other, if you start a new game now, it could be an incredible game, but you will not have 30 years of history under your log. And for me as a designer, zooming back out a little bit, what that means as a corollary is we have over 30 years of design history. There's over 30 years of processes of how we make Magic cards, what we've learned, what feedback we've gotten from our players, what we've been able to learn and incorporate into our sets. And I've been there for 14 years of that time. And so I've learned and I've evolved and I've even helped craft that theory and change what we know and what we believe to be true about how we design the game. So for me, one of the greatest things as a designer is be able to learn all the things we've done before and apply that going forward, and then let new people come in, learn from that, and have the opportunity to craft Magic's future, right? In many ways, Magic is a tapestry that we all weave bits of ourselves into. And I think it is so cool that we get to make ourselves part of what Magic is.
That brings me to a question that I've been thinking about. As someone who works in a creative field, I know my appetite for something I've made typically dies immediately once I've done it. And I'm like, that's back there. Like, that was terrible. The next thing is amazing. What are some of the things that have that staying power where you look back on sets you've done or cards you've designed, where you're like, regardless of whether this was a smash hit or what we could have done better here, what are some of those like little sticking points where you've been like, that was a banger? Like that whether it was a card or a concept or a mechanic, what are those things that you look back on and you're like, that's a signpost of like, I did that, I feel really good about that, and it's aged well, because I know, especially in creative field, when you put something out there, you're like, this is what I got, and then sometimes you're like, the next thing might be better. Who knows? We always got to try again.
It's very on the nose to say this, and obviously it's really early, but I do feel like Final Fantasy is one of those for me. Like, sometimes when you finish a Magic set, you send it off, and you're like, great job, everybody. We made a really cool Magic set. Like, awesome, great job. Like, thumbs up. It's going to be awesome. Players are going to love it. And that's great. And that's most sets we make. But every now and then we'll ship a set and it'll be like, that was something really special. Like, that is something, look, I'm not crazy, right? Like that was really amazing. You kind of look around the room as you see all the cards come together. Because there's like this moment, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but we're all working together. It's a very collaborative environment. But even with it being such a collaborative environment, you don't often see everything all together, right? And often you're so in the weeds on something that like you see it all happening, but you're focused on your specific part, right? So like I'll see the art and the flavor text and everything come in, and I'm like, cool, that exists. I see it. I'm calling the cards by their names, but I'm not. It's not until the end of the process when the last things we do is this process where everyone on design gets to see all the cards and just review them for any like late feedback or anything like that. And that's where you kind of take a step back for the first time in years. Because making Magic that takes years, right? To finally take a step back. You look at everything on the page, name, art, flavor text, all the cards in order, mechanics. You see kind of what it's become. And I remember with Final Fantasy, I was at that process, that last little bit there, where I took a step back and I was like, holy moly. Like, this is really an incredible achievement. And like nothing we've ever done before. And so I really do think that's that. I think Final Fantasy will last the test of time. So that's one thing I'm extremely proud of that I got the chance to work on. And I think we'll do that. But setting aside, obviously the thing of the day that we all want to talk about, it'd be easy to just talk about it forever. A lot of older things that I make. One thing I always love is when years later players reference something as like something that meant a lot to them or was a fan favorite or they still ask for a sequel to. And so my first ever Magic set lead, Battlebond, is a set that's very meaningful to me. We've never done another one. We've never done a sequel yet. Maybe someday. I always got my fingers crossed. But it is something that I think stood the test of time really well. If you never played it, what Battlebond is it's a set focused on Two-Headed Giant. Two-Headed Giant is a way to play Magic where you play with somebody. So it's not like 4-player free-for-all like Commander. It's not one-on-one like traditional Magic. It's me and you, or it's me and a friend playing against two other people. And we can see each other's hands. We can share information. We can talk strategy during the game. And playing with somebody, I think, leaves a mark on you in like a really positive way. And the number of people that I've had come up to me be like, hey, I played with my partner this way, or my kid this way, or my really close friend this way, was really special and meaningful and cool. And while the set did medium when it came out, it it had a really long history of people loving it and talking about it years and years later. And so you love to see that kind of like, I don't want to say cult classic because it wasn't like a failure at the time or anything, but that kind of long-standing success is really meaningful to me. And some sets come and go, but that experience I think is very special.
This is the first time that I've heard of, you called it Battlebond?
Battlebond, yeah.
That is such a cool concept. When I was learning, I kind of wanted that kind of collaborative sort of Big Brother sort of situation of like, how do you play this? You know, that sort of thing. And when the fall semester started, I've got a couple of students in my class that came up to me and said, you did a few videos on Magic this summer. I was like, I did. And they were like, we need to get other students to play. And I was like, that's awesome. Where would you start? And they would talk about their favorite decks or collections and all that kind of stuff. But it strikes me, I have the Foundations pack, and that's really helpful for beginners. But this one would be so good for building community and stuff. That one is first time I've ever heard of that. And Nick, have you played Battlebond? Is that
I can say very proudly that when I first got back into Magic, maybe a decade ago, or I don't know when it came out. Battlebond was the first box I bought when I got back in. I adore that set. It's the perfect like weird, like because I've got some Vorthos in me for full transparency.
I know what that means.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm going to go with it. I don't know.
It's basically there are like 4 archetypes of like Magic players in shorthand. So there's like a Spike, Timmy, Johnny, and Vorthos. I think if I'm remembering well. Basically, it's like, how do you approach the game? Do you care about lore? Do you care about doing something big and splashy? Do you care about winning? Do you care about executing the very perfect combo? Whatever. It's arbitrary shorthand, but Battlebond's lore was some of my favorite because it's this little pocket plane where everything is this giant grand tournament, and it's very cool. But the two-headed giant format was one of the ways that I got some of my friend group that's now my play group into it, because it's a really helpful way to like, okay, like you're not completely cut loose, and like I'd been playing on and off, so like my card collection is weird and huge, and you know I'm playing like winter orbs against people who are learning. I'm like, this is not nice. This is not helpful. But two-headed giant's really helpful because it helps kind of, you find ways to take 2 separate entities and put them together, and they become greater than the sum of their parts. So yeah, it's a really, really fun format.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things about Magic is, will happen to all of you if it hasn't already. I'm sure it's happened to all of us probably. Is you all friend that's like, hey, I love this game. Like, it sounds like you really love this game. Can I learn it? Can I come play it with you? Yep. And, I'm happy to teach. And there's so many good teaching materials out there. The Foundations Beginner Box is one of the best things we've ever done for teaching. It's so good.
Absolutely.
But there's this barrier of like, all right, someone who has played 8,000 hours of Magic is going to sit across from you who has played 0 hours of Magic, and we're going to see who wins. And even though, there's plenty of variance built in, and, Magic's still pretty fun, even when you're losing, like all that kind of stuff, it still is like kind of a tough pill to swallow sometimes. We're able to play alongside somebody where it's like, oh, I'm and my buddy are teaming up to try and take you down. This feels so good, and is a great way to learn. And you can help educate people as you play along. I think one of the successes of Commander, which there are many, is that although it is not a collaborative game, like it's still 4 players all fighting against each other, because it's not a tournament format, stakes are really low, it's casual. Helping someone out during the course of that game, just pointing things out to them, is totally okay and accepted. And so often you get a very similar thing happening where a new player will sit down and maybe people won't attack them for a little while, or they'll like, talk them through their plays and their options. And that's a great educational moment. I think that's even further enhanced with Two-Headed Giant, but Commander does a decent job of approximating that as well. And yeah, it's really meaningful to me that so many folks got in that way.
Just terrific. Like I said, I'm the newest to Magic around here, and so I just kind of walk through wide-eyed. But my real introduction to Magic, like we've said, was the Final Fantasy deck, but it really was at PAX West. When you and your team and Ben Starr did the unveiling of all of these cards and went through every Final Fantasy, I was like, okay, this guy is speaking my language. And I don't know what these cards do, but I love the art and what they're talking about that these cards do. Like with the Fang and the Vanille card joining together, I was like, they understand the lore. And that really enticed me and gave me this kind of I don't know, this grit to get past those barriers of entry. When you started doing collaborations like that, obviously you knew that it was going to bring in newcomers, people that liked Final Fantasy. I think you're up to Spider-Man now and maybe Avatar a little bit later on this year. What is the balance between trying to bring in these new people, get people like me excited, and then also catering to people like, say, Nick, for example, that have been in it for a couple decades now? Is that a tension that you have to run between kind of like the commercialization and the traditionalists?
So the way I see some of this stuff is that every card is an invitation. It's an invitation to come play, right? Because you never know what card is going to be the first card someone sees. You talk to 100 Magic players, you'll probably get 100 different answers of what the first card they ever saw was that got them excited to go play Magic. And it is a game that has a lot of history and certainly it's got a lot of complexities.
Do you remember the card that excited you first?
The first card that excited me, it was Drudge Skeletons. It was in the first starter deck I ever bought. It was a sweet skeleton. It couldn't die. And I was like, this is awesome. I can tell you that story a little bit later too, but I'll say that like every part is an invitation. And so I think it's so powerful in these collaborations because it's exactly like you said. You're like, well, if I'd asked you before Final Fantasy, you want to try Magic, but I'd be like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't have a connection to it. And like, maybe it's going to take my time and be a little hard or whatever. But then when I'm like, hey, you can play with your favorite Final Fantasy character and it's a sweet card. It looks like this. You can put it in your deck. You're like, okay, this actually passes my threshold of wanting to give this a try. I think the very visceral thing of Fang and Vanille, who have the meld mechanic, to let you take these two cards, flip them over, and turn them into one gigantic card, is a really good representation of that. I'm so glad we fought to keep that in the set. It was not easy to get that in there.
I'm sure.
But every card is an invitation. You never know what's going to be the card for somebody. And with a set like Final Fantasy, it was so hard to pick and choose what to put in there because we only had so many slots in the set. And everyone has their favorite character. And so being able to send out all the right invitations was a really challenging process. And with all these Universe Beyond sets that we're making, I see all of them as an invitation, right? Because there's a property out there for everybody. And maybe Final Fantasy isn't your thing, but Avatar is, or whatever. Take this as your invitation to come into Magic. And we just want to say, hey, our game is awesome. We might have not tried this out before, but come check us out. Come and play. And then what we're finding is people will get into these collaboration sets, which are great and wonderful in their own right. And then they stick around, right? People come in through Lord of the Rings or Final Fantasy, and then they stick around for the rest of Magic and our own worlds and the other collaborations that we do. And most of all, the community, because the community is so powerful and so strong. And I think that's a really huge testament to Magic, right? They're not just coming in for these collaborative sets because they like the thing, then leaving. They're coming in, trying them out, seeing how good the game is, and sticking. And this is not scientific. I don't have a number on this, that's an official one that I'll share. But I'll say for me personally, the number of players that come up to me and say, hey, I started Magic because of Universe Beyond set is astronomical. It's like almost everybody these days that comes up is like, oh, I started with a UB set. And I think that just goes to show how strong we can pull that in, right? If you started in the past year or two, that is anyway. Obviously, many players started with older sets, and that's great. But if you started playing in the past year or two, so many people came in from like a Lord of the Rings or a Fallout or a Final Fantasy, and then they're stuck around and they're playing all the sets and they're enjoying all of Magic, and we're just growing the whole game, which is really magical to see.
I see what you did there. It is magical to see. That was nice play on words. Evan, I wonder, as you're kind of thinking about, kind of watching my experience and all that kind of stuff, what does all of this kind of make you think about? Getting new people in, you've been a fan of it for years. I'm just wondering, kind of as a bystander watching my journey and all of our community, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had the esteemed privilege of getting to watch Wade play his very first Magic game on the hotel bed with the starter set that was given out at PAX East, and getting to explain to him and our other friend what you can do, why you can't do certain things, what tapping the card meant, because they always just kept tapping it with their fingers. It was I was like, all right, now you have to tap it. And he's like, I don't understand why I have to keep touching it. But he just goes, tap. And I'm like, no, that means turn it sideways. And he goes, why doesn't it say turn it sideways? And I'm like, we'll get there. We'll get there. I can see that a great amount of energy has been given to getting people into that first kind of 2 to 3 games, getting them playing a more curated experience. I remember very distinctly us looking at the kind of flavor instructions card on the starter deck, and I didn't know this, and it just said, do not shuffle this. And I'm just watching them just shuffling their cards on the bed, and I went, we're never getting this back. We're going to have to create our own starter experience. Now, that's on us. Reading is one of our major faults. Yeah, we really struggle with reading the instructions.
The first page of the beginner box actually has the deck list set in order, so you can recreate that, because that we saw that exact thing happen, right? Like we give you as many warnings as possible. You give you as many warnings as possible. When all of our focus group testing, half the time they just shuffle them anyway, and then they're like, "Uh-oh, we don't have the game ready." So we put that in the first page. They're like, don't worry, you can reset your deck to this; it'll be fine.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and we apologize for missing it twice then on our playthrough. When it comes to getting the new player experience, I think there's a good structure that seems in place to really get people connected and playing the game. You talk about people picking and finding a card or a universe that kind of pulls them in. I'm curious about what it looks like and how you as a design team are thinking about getting people to play their 10th, 20th, 50th game and bridging that gap between that completely new player and that super experienced player. It's easy to curate those first 5 to 10 games and help somebody to have fun, but in something that has so much creativity and so much lore that you can pull from, what do you view as that kind of next step after a beginning player? Maybe they've fallen in love with the card, but how are you thinking and what are the conversations look like for getting people not just connected and started with the game, but engaged and kind of falling in love with it? How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, there's this thing that kind of happens with Magic where you start the people off with the beginner decks, right? Something very simple, very approachable, and then they're like, "What's next?" They're like, "Ooh, what do I do next?" And well, I don't want to say you throw them to the wolves, because obviously that's not quite the right approach or the right metaphor. I think one of the things that is most appealing and powerful about Magic to the people that enjoy this kind of game is how much there is to discover, right? It is like an endless wealth of discovery. And that's where that history comes in. And so for me, we try and make it so every single set we make is approachable, right? Every set we make has a few new mechanics, got a theme that you can wrap your head around. And if you start with a beginner box for Foundations, and you go by Edge of Eternities or Tarkir Dragonstorm or Final Fantasy or whatever the set is, you'll see a few new mechanics you haven't seen before. You'll see a cool world that you've never seen before. And then you get to play out in that sandbox for a little while, and you buy some packs, and maybe you do a booster draft and build a deck or something. And hey, that's wonderful. That's great. And then the next set comes out. You take that knowledge that you had from the previous set, you lock that away in your head. You have all those cards. You've learned all that already. You go on to the next thing. And if you're daring, you would go back in the past and explore a little bit further, or play Commander, where you might see all kinds of wild old cards. Or you can take it a set at a time. But like any learning or educational experience, it's about using the blocks you have from before to build on to the next thing. And one thing that we found is that if you keep people in a sandbox of just very, very simple Magic for a long time, eventually they will get bored and leave, right? Like there was a little bit of research we did where we were like, what if we let you play 100 games of just the most simple Magic you could imagine, right? So make sure you really build up your skills and it's great and whatever. And the reality is, after like 4 or 5 games, people were just like, okay, I get it. They're like, cool, I understand Magic. Yeah. I played it. I played the Magics. And then they're done. Where in game 5, you're like, all right, let me introduce you to a brand new mechanic you've never seen before. This is a spacecraft. Here's how that works. They're like, whoa, there's spacecrafts? Let me learn what that is. And so that little bit of complexity is actually, I think, really important for hooking people. Because if they think all your game is grizzly bears attacking and blocking, they'll be like, okay, I understand how this game works. I remember the first time I was teaching them how to play years ago. We had played a bunch of games, and they were like, okay, cool, whatever. And I was like, okay, let's play one more game. And I brought out a deck, and they're like, okay, cool, whatever. And I brought out a deck that was a controlling deck, right? So almost no creatures, lots of board sweepers and removal, a little bit of like counter magic. We played a game, And that might sound like a horrible experience, right? It's like a deck that is constructed to try and stop my opponents from doing things. But that isn't what hooked the other player. They're like, wow, you can build a deck with almost no creatures. You can just try and play a 20-turn game. You're just trying to remove it. Like, there's so much strategic and dynamism to this game. And I thought that was a really great teaching moment for me of like, sometimes seeing that deeper strategy is what hooks you into the game. And so I don't think we want to guard people from that. We want to keep some safeguards around it. We want to give it to you slowly, but we don't want to just leave you in the same walled garden forever. We want to let you go and explore and bump your head along the way, because you'll see all this cool stuff as you journey around.
I think we're a little curious then how you guys think about keeping it fresh for people too, though. It's one of the most overwhelming games I've ever played, because it doesn't feel great to lose all the time. And depending on the competitive nature of the player, to lose to something that you didn't know was a thing that you could lose to at first, for a lot of us, is not very enjoyable. It'd be like playing a game of football and then somebody brings out a helicopter and they're like, I get to put the ball in the helicopter now and I fly it to the end zone. And also, I just buried all your players. And you're like, what? Now, wait. But then you realize, oh, I have my own helicopter, right? And so when you talk about something that's that expansive and trying to keep it fresh for people who are established, but then keeping people engaged, what are those things that you do to try and keep things really, really fresh in the game? What does that look like? And what is your design team's kind of philosophy on keeping it engaging and balanced at the same time?
Yeah, so what we found is just like core Magic is a really fun, compelling game, right? Just like Magic is fun and compelling, and there is so much strategic depth with just even very simple cards, right? You can play Foundations, which is ostensibly like fairly simple cards, still have a very deep and rich, engaging game of Magic. You don't actually need a lot else. So for us, the freshness comes from, I think, two main areas. The first area that I think it is not discussed enough in this conversation is the creative. If I could give you 4 sets that contained exactly the same Magic cards, imagine they contained exactly the same mechanical Magic cards, but one is a space set, one is a Victorian horror set, one is a Nordic themed set, and one is like a Japan-inspired world. And those 4 sets are going to feel so different, even though the cards are exactly identical. And they'll have different art and different vibes, and they'll bring in different players because they like different things. And I think that the creative of Magic does so much to make it feel fresh and different on its own already. So for us, on the game design standpoint, the question then is, how much different do we need to do each time? And really what we need to do is build in some mechanics that help bring the world to life. And so what we're looking to do with every set is, okay, there's this creative we know is going to hook people. We aren't, in fact, just going to make the same exact card set every single time. So if we have this creative that's going to be great and hook people, what are the mechanics that are going to fit into that creative to make it really fresh and novel? And that is, I think, the sauce that comes together to make it feel different. Because when you go to Edge of Eternities, our space theme set that came out recently, a lot of the cards are just remixes or even identical to things you've seen before. Okay, it's a card that deals 2 damage and has a very small bonus. It's a 3 mana 2/1 flyer, with an ability. You've seen this, if you play Magic, you've seen this 100 times. But it's those small abilities we put in that give it a different wrinkle, make it feel a little bit different than the last time. And this time, white has 3 mana 2/2 flyer instead of blue having the 3 mana 2/2 flyer at common. Those very small differences, they all add a little bit of texture that changes things. So when you look at a set like Edge of Eternities, it only has a few new mechanics, 3-4 new mechanics maybe, but those mechanics do a lot of heavy lifting to make it feel different than before. And then you think about how those mechanics start pairing with the other mechanics in the set to talk to each other and create this interesting web of like, oh wow, these are 2 mechanics, creates a whole third dynamic I haven't even considered. And all of that in tandem is making every set feel very, very different, despite the fact that a lot of it is just something that you've seen and you have familiarity of. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And in fact, as designers, we want to preserve design space for the future, because my goal is for Magic to be around long after I retire, long after I'm dead. I want my kids to play Magic. I want their kids to play Magic. I want to be going on and on and on forever and ever. So we don't have to go through all this design space if we don't need to. Let's just do what we need to do to make it feel fresh and unique every single time. And we do that, and our players will be like, wow, this set is so fresh and so original, when there's only a few new mechanics in it because of how much complexity there is in those mechanics and how much they interplay with each other. If you look at Final Fantasy, this is a great example of that. We introduced Saga Creatures.
Yeah.
Creatures have existed in Magic since the very beginning. Sagas have existed in Magic since 2018, I believe. This is the first time we ever put Saga Creature together. There's nothing new here. There's nothing individually that you don't know how it works. If you've seen either type before, you've seen both types before, you know how this is going to work. But holy smokes, it blew people's minds because this combination was brand new and fresh, and it makes it feel like a whole new thing. And you paint on the flavor of them being the summons, and you're like, wow, something so original and crazy. And we feel the same way. We're playtesting. We're like, wow, we've never had this experience before. But ultimately, just two things that already existed put together. Chocolate and peanut butter in one place. And we can do that a lot with Magic, and that makes things feel very different, despite not actually being all that different, which I think is pretty amazing.
Nick explained that to us kind of for the first time when we were doing our videos, where he's like, well, typically the abilities and what they do will try and fit with the story of the characters. So they kind of fit, and they work really hard to do that. And Wade, I wonder if you could share a little bit about your reaction as a Final Fantasy fan as Nick brought the tomes from on high and showed them to us.
Nothing got me in quicker than that. Like I was just like, I have loved these summons. We used Bahamut, right? And looking at the Bahamut saga, I was like, I understand what this thing does without understanding Magic. And so like I was immediately in, and the discovery of other summons, Knights of the Round, and all of these others, it's just like, I will lose a game trying to pull off a summon. Like every time I'm like, oh, I've got Bahamut in my hand. I got to do this. It's been a wonderful time. So I love that kind of juxtaposition of those mechanics, though. Really creative.
You matched it. You talked about matching it up to the art and the value that the art has in the connection with the game when you're holding it in your hand and you can see and visualize and imagine the mechanics happening there. Nick, I know that you are really connected with a lot of the artists, and you spend a lot of time and your energy getting prints and playmats and all sorts of things. I wonder, from your creative perspective, what you're curious about, being someone that's appreciated this art and these game mechanics for such a long time. Where does that lead you, based on our conversation, to kind of spark your curiosity here?
So I think one of the things that I always think about, especially kind of, Gavin, you talked a little about the kind of when we find this creative area to express the set, and then we find our mechanical area to pair them together, and then now we got a stew. How early in the process do you feel like those gears fit together? Like, is it we have a stable of ideas and planes and places where we're trying to find the right mechanical fit for, or is it more of like, okay, we have this, like, here's our forecasted calendar, here's where this product needs to hit, so here's kind of our where do the angles come in on some of that marriage of creativity and the flavor text and the lore and the setting, broad scale, with those kind of, okay, we do have a product to ship here, so we got to get it out the door in a reasonable amount of time. All right,
let's take a moment to zoom on out, then I'll kind of run you through it a little bit. So, when I said earlier, Final Fantasy took almost 5 years to make, that might sound wild, but Magic works really, really, really far in advance. And we make these plans years and years in advance of what we're going to be doing with our sets. And what they are is very simple top line stuff, right? Like, I could tell you, to be clear, I'm not going to tell you because Liz would throttle me. But I could, I know all the sets we're doing through the 2030s, right? Through like the early 2030s. We were really far in advance
Morse code?
The kind of stuff we do. And that is at this point, they're all just like small little shapes of what they are.
Yeah.
But we kind of know what they're. Hey, we're going to go to this world. Hey, we're going to have this kind of mechanical theme. It is the very, very top line of what we're doing. But like, hey, we're going to a world inspired by Egyptian mythology. Hey, we're going to go back to Ravnica here, which is one of our most popular worlds. Hey, we're going to try something new. We're going to build up a brand new world using 3 colors as the basis of this. We kind of have this penciled in. And then what happens is we know what that theme is going to be from a flavor stand. We don't really know the mechanics at this point, but we know the flavor of it. Then eventually, many years in advance, 4 or 5 years in advance, we begin what we call exploratory design, where we just start digging in. Okay, what are some mechanics we could use here? The idea being kind of like an ice cream style like approach of like, you're going to just try a bunch of different mechanics and see what works. And that kind of creates a roster of mechanics you can try that are going to meld with the flavor, the creative. And then after exploratory design, the creative world building starts. And it uses those early mechanics as like a basis for, hey, maybe we should try and build this in to the flavor somehow. Then what the flavor ends up being, he's back in the mechanics. It's like, oh, actually, we took this inspiration. We're like, what would be really cool on this Egyptian world are cartouches. You just come up with a mechanic that represents cartouches. Right? Okay, yeah, no problem. Go back and make the, come with cartouches. And as this kind of funnel happens, right? Things, exploratory design changes into more concrete stages of design. The creative process goes through, and eventually we lock basically a bunch of writers and artists in a room for 2 weeks, and they create this thing called the World Guide, which is like 300 pages of art and flavor and story all about that world. And then we use that to go back to the mechanics and look again to inform what's going on. So we like constantly are funneling everything down and down and down, and working in parallel, creative and design, to help come up with the stuff together. And that's where I think you see the best work happen, right? With this marriage of things. And it all starts kind of knowing what the very basic theme is, and then doing some very initial exploratory work on the mechanics, followed by some very initial creative exploration. And then it all kind of just goes back and forth from there as we kind of play off of each other. And it hasn't always been that way. When I got to Wizards, it was so different. And Magic was made so different back then. Believe it or not, there was a time where we made the set, then we'd be like, tossed it over the wall. Boop. All right, creative, figure out what you're going to do with it. And then they would, put everything on top of it, which is bananas, right? Like thinking about how we make Magic now, the marriage of flavor and function is critical. But it was not always that way, and I'm so glad we can make it that way these days.
What was it that navigated that change? Because that's did somebody just decide, hey, the wall's coming down, it's gonna be a drive-through window now, and we're gonna hand the mechanics through, and then it just gradually opened up? From an organizational standpoint, what did that change process look like? Because it sounds like you were able to see at least part of it. Yeah,
I'd say that one of the biggest successes is we started trying some sets. We're like, hey, let's try this wild thing out. Let's make a set that starts with flavor first, and then we'll design a world of it. I think the early examples of this were like Innistrad, for example. Innistrad was a Victorian horror setting with vampires and zombies and werewolves, and that was like, okay, let's work hand in hand with creative to build this set. There are a few other early ones like that as well. And man, Innistrad came out and it was a smash hit. You could see how well that did for people. And then before you know it, we were following it up with Theros, which was our Greek-inspired world. And that kind of started a new age of design, of doing all these flavor and creative forward things that then mechanics got figured out in tandem with. Now, in the history, to be clear, in the history of Magic, there have been plenty of like, hey, let's design to match this character, or it wasn't. It was a little hyperbolic, being like, we finish the set and then we throw it over the wall. But it was a lot more. That was like, design always takes precedence, flavor takes a backseat. We'll figure all that stuff out, and that's how it was. In some of the early days. So it says, hey, we're gonna do this like jungle-inspired world, but like whatever mechanics you want. These days, it is a lot tighter. We are really hand in hand. We often embed people from the creative team on the design team, even to make sure that it's being represented well.
So I have a couple of questions regarding this as a hobby, because you're not just like a maker of Magic. You also enjoy it. Like in your spare time, do you play a lot of Magic, like when you're not at work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. I love Magic. I will have plenty of days where I work all day, and then of my own free will and excitement, I go play Magic in the evenings. When I travel the places on weekends, when I was like meeting up with friends to play Magic, I have Magic Arena downloaded on my phone. It's like when I go to apps that I play. So I love this game so dearly, around the clock.
So how does it stay fresh with the balance of the work that you do? Sometimes the things that we love, when it becomes crunch time and stuff like that, it really starts to become stale. We may even start to like resent a little bit a hobby that we really love. We've got a lot of people in the audience that love to play games, and then they just kind of burn out on them, especially if they get into like content creation route and that sort of thing. How do you balance the love for the game, the work of the game, and just keeping it fresh for yourself?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest strengths of Magic is that it is different every time. I mean that truly in all axes, right? Like every time you play a game, the odds you play a game that is exactly the same are infinitesimally small, right? There's the odds that your cards were shuffled in the exact same order and their cards are shuffled in the exact same order and you play against exactly the same deck is so low that you're unlikely to have exactly the same game play out twice. So even if there's a lot of similar cards show up, every game feels different. Combine that with every set feels different. You know, in some ways, if you think about it, every single set we make could be its own game. That was Richard Garfield's original vision, in fact, right? Like originally Magic, I don't know if you all know this, but Magic the Gathering, the original idea was the Gathering was the appellation for the first ever set. Then it would be Magic Arabian Nights, Magic the Dark, Magic Final Fantasy, Magic Edge of Eternities, right? The idea that each one of these was their own self-contained experience. And so every set is kind of like its own new game. And you play it for a few months and then you go on to the next thing. That is, I think, what keeps it always fresh to me is it's always changing. And internally at Wizards at work, it's always changing too, because we're always having to come up with new ideas, new designs to keep it fresh and interesting. And so it never gets boring for me because it's always different. It's constantly different and it's all evolving. So that is, I think, the bulk of it. I do think that for me personally, what helps out a lot is when I'm playing Magic at work or thinking about Magic at work, it is different than when I'm thinking about Magic playing with my friends. Because when I'm at work, I'll be asking myself questions like, is this card fun? Should it cost more? Is this game going well? How is this draft going? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. Where when I'm playing with my friends, I just turn that off and I just get to, play a game of Magic. So it is a bit of a different mindset, but I really think the absolute key that keeps Magic so attractive to so many people, because even though I work at Wizards, I'm far from the only person that plays Magic all the time, constantly every single week. And I think a lot of it is just that it is fresh all the time. And that's pretty hard for a game to maintain.
I want to give you an opportunity to explain to a brand new, and I'm going to be selfish here, college student, to give your pitch for Magic. Why should they give this game a look? Really, what kind of clip would you offer to my freshman that I could say, hey, this could be a really cool thing for you? What would you say to somebody just kind of peeking over the wall?
Yeah. Here's what I'd say, and this might not be what you would expect. What I'd say is Magic is an invitation to a huge network and a world unlike you've ever seen. The game is great. I love the game. It's fantastic. I've played Magic my entire life. I expect to continue playing it my entire life. It's different every time. It's wonderful, and you will never, truly never get bored. But the thing even bigger than that for me, far beyond the game, is the incredible community behind it. Like if you're coming to college and you want to make friends, I guarantee you start playing Magic, you will have friends instantaneously. You will find people all around you that are playing, and there are Magic clubs at most universities. You'll find games going on in cafeterias, and it's hard to meet new people, make new friends sometimes. You just walk on to a bunch of Magic players, you are immediately one of them. You're talking about stuff just like that. I'm sure any Magic player has experienced this. I go to game stores all around the world, and I walk in, never met any of these people, and we are all friends right away. We all have shared opinions about the sets. We have a shared language that we are united on. We can play a game and sit down and have a connection right away. That is unbelievable, right? How many other ways in the world can you do that? How many places can you just walk in on a Friday night and immediately have a community and friends? People will want to hang out afterward and chat about the games you just played. Like that is really something special. And these people I've met through Magic, they're some of my closest friends. I've been to their weddings. I have friends that have gotten married to people they met playing Magic. I've gone on trips all around the world, people I met through Magic. I have been there through some of their lowest times, helped them out when they needed it. The community of Magic is unbelievable. And if you're in college and you're starting to play Magic, you will enter all that now and have that for the rest of your life. It is larger than any individual game. It is something that sticks with you forever.
I love that. That's a terrific answer, and you better believe I'm going to clip that for all of my freshmen. But one other thing, I was talking to some students earlier this semester, and I was surprised that these students had played Magic since about 2020, but they got into it during the pandemic. And they said, this was where I found my relationships. This is where I found my community when I couldn't have physical community anymore. And so that's when they got into, I think some of them had even like done face cam stuff, like here's the cards that I'm laying down and stuff like that in this kind of primitive way. But I do think that the gathering aspect of Magic really is the just beauty of it. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pandemic. Like during the pandemic, that was a really meaningful activity for folks to have access to, right? Because imagine you're stuck with your bubble of like, let's say 3 other people. Well, you can play a game of Magic in person together, right? You can play Commander with each other, or you can use SpellTable to play online. And it was, once again, in a time where community was what we needed. It was brought people together and created communities. And that's just, I mean, the power of this game is unbelievable. More than just a game, it really is like a lifestyle. I think that's really something special.
With SpellTable, correct me if I'm wrong, I've only played it once. You have to have the physical decks, correct?
Right. Yeah. Basically, what SpellTable is it just is it lets you put your camera on a screen with 3 other people that are all playing Magic, and it's got some great tools built in. It's got life total tracking. It has this really neat ability where you can click on a card on the screen and it'll pull up the image of it. It's got pretty good card tracking technology. So that's really
learned
cool.
that through the charity stream that I was on. I was like just amazed at the technology. I don't know if you can say this. Are there any plans of making Commander a digital option in the future, like Arena?
Yeah, so right now you can already play Commander on Magic the Gathering Online, which is, we have 2 digital clients. Magic the Gathering Online is one of them. But we've talked some already about how we're investigating multiplayer play for the future on Arena. There's a lot of challenges that go along with that on multiple axes. First challenge is just the client wasn't built to have 4 people in a game. And so when you think about like, hey, I play it on my phone all the time. Well, getting 4 Commander games to fit on a phone screen poses some challenges. But the second thing is so much about Commander is the social element. It's about being able to talk with your friends, laughing over a game. It's not about just who wins and loses. And being able to build in social features so you can still kind of have that discussion is something that I think that team is probably keen on. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got there eventually. I know they're looking at it pretty seriously, but when and how it's going to look is all up in the air. But I think we would be foolish to not investigate putting our biggest and most popular format on the main way to play digital Magic.
Good answer. I look forward to future developments.
There is a format called Brawl, which exists on Arena right now, which has a lot of similarities to Commander, but you can only play it one-on-one, right? So it's a bit of a different feel.
Yeah, a lot of the magic I think in Commander, especially talking through like new player funnel, is that the side conversations across the table. My favorite deck is one that is just based on asking other players questions and offering deals and things. And it's one of those things that's hard to explain within the context of game mechanics because like it's not necessarily trying to like those aren't winning actions, but they are important actions, and especially as someone who's helped onboard people through Commander. That ability to reach across the table a little bit and be like, okay, you're struggling a little bit. Let me see if I can like juice you up a little bit. Really, really is one of I think the unique parts about that format in particular.
Absolutely, and that conversation is critical. So how do you represent that in a digital client where you're not just playing with your 3 friends, you're playing with a bunch of strangers online, right? So I think there are good ways to do it. It just will take time to figure out.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming from a very passionate community with the Final Fantasy community, and that collision between Magic the Gathering and Final Fantasy, just like any 2 families meeting in a wedding per se. You never know how the rehearsal dinner and how the wedding is going to go, and maybe the wedding reception and the relationships afterwards. Before we turn Wade loose on you for a lot of Final Fantasy questions, because he's been chomping at the bit, I bet.
I've tried to save them for the very end.
We're so proud of you. You did great. You talk about how Magic is, at its core, it's an invitation. And you talk about how community building has been one of your favorite aspects of the role that Magic has played in your life, is the communities of people that it connects you with. And then you talk about all of the things that happened growing up between your family to play board and card games that built community. I wonder if you could share a little bit about some of the early lessons that you learned from those family and friend play experiences that you feel you bring from those relationships and your family unit into that invitation that you provide in the way that you're stewarding Magic in this season in your role.
Yeah. I grew up playing all kinds of games with my family. And in fact, Magic with my brother was a huge piece of it, right? He was my play partner. We would play Magic back and forth all day long and build decks and all that kind of stuff. So it was really integral to my life. But I think one thing that was really instilled in me from an early age with games is that games are meant to be fun. And don't forget that, like it's easy to sit around the table and be really competitive with your family. But we always try to take a zoom back, and my mom would always bring it back to, are we having fun? Are we having a good time? Because maybe you won, maybe you lost. Did you have a good time? And that's what really counts. And I think that really helped my perspective with how I design things now, because you're not going to win all your games. But you know what's awesome in Magic? I know I've made something good when someone loses and says they had a good time. That is, because if you win, you're going to be like, yeah, I probably had a good time. It's, a lot of people say that. But when you lose and had a good time, that's way harder to do. And that's something I really try and instill in everything I work on. So it really comes back to like, are we having fun? And something I think about all the time when designing.
So we could give the credit for the fun aspect of modern Magic almost exclusively to your mother for any of the sets that you've worked on?
Maybe all of the designers and mothers, depending on who you are.
Yeah, okay. It's a team of mothers. That sounds good. Nick, I'm curious what you're curious about before we set Wade loose in his Final Fantasy airship here.
Yeah, you alluded to a little bit. Obviously, Magic has grown a lot, even recently. I know we have, as of recording date, MagicCon Atlanta is in like 4 days. That will be my first MagicCon, which I'm very excited about. What would you say, especially to someone who's new to Magic or new to the convention aspect of Magic, what are the things that, like, if there's one happening near you, go and check this out, whether it's events, whether it's panels, whether it's Artist Alley, what are the things that you're like, as like a new set of eyes, a new person in the room, what's the one where you're like, this will really like set the hook for your experience? Yeah.
With MagicCon, I feel like there is no one size fits all answer because every player is different. Like, one of the things that I love about Magic is it's not one game, it's 100 games. People love it for different reasons. Some people love Commander, some people love one-on-one competitive, some people love the story, some people just love the art, some people want to cosplay, and like everyone has the different thing they love about the game, and it's their folks and they believe is important. And depending on what your thing is, it might really impact what you want to do at a MagicCon. So there is no one size fits all answer. I will say that for me, the two things that are always big highlights, and I'm biased because I'm involved in both of them, but also I think they're legitimately great, are Game Nights Live, which is this unbelievably cool live show that happens at MagicCon. It's a live Commander game, but it's like, imagine if pro wrestling met a game at Magic, right? It's like there's wild walkouts and theme music and costumes. I'm one of the announcers. It's wild and a really fun time. You've never seen anything quite like it Magic-wise. We watch a bunch of the old ones on YouTube, and we do a new one every Magic. And the second thing are my unknown events. This is something very unique that I kind of pioneered. Once again, the weird stuff. They came to me and said, Gavin, we want you to run an event at MagicCon. We want it to be a spectacle. You figure out what it is. And I created this thing called the Unknown Event, which basically is a event where people are handed playtest cards they've never seen before. The cards I designed that have never been played anywhere. You get to play in a deck of Magic. You get to play basically limited, so sealed deck, like a pre-release, but with a bunch of weird cards that you've never seen before. And you get to keep them afterwards. You get to take them home, and they are very special keepsakes and truly novel, because every time people are like, what the heck's going to happen this time, right? And I think it makes it pretty fun. So those are two things I say to look forward to, but really walk around and find your own Magic. That's part of the experience. The discovery, I think, is part of the fun.
Very cool.
All right. So, Gavin, my name's ProfNoctis from Final Fantasy 15. We run a Final Fantasy channel more often than not. We delve into a lot of things, The Last of Us, and we've done a lot of different games and discussions and stuff. But Final Fantasy really is where it is for me. So I just got to know, first of all, I know that you're a Final Fantasy fan, but which is your favorite Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I love tons and tons of games. I grew up playing these things and I have nostalgia for each one in different ways. But I really love it. My favorite is a bit of a dark horse, although the more I've talked about it, the more people have told me that is actually not as uncommon as I thought, is Final Fantasy IX. I love Final Fantasy IX. I love the kind of return to high fantasy. I love the tone of it. I think the characters are really great. I love the story that's told. It's a little smaller in scope, or even though it's a world-ending potentially thing that happens, it's a little smaller in scope than some of the other stories. But I really appreciate that about it, and I have a lot of good memories playing that game. So it's one of my favorites. Of course, I love every game in different ways, and it's so hard to disentangle them, as I'm sure it is for you too. But 9 is my fave.
Favorite Final Fantasy Magic card?
Favorite Final Fantasy Magic card? That's a toughie. It's like looking at every single card in that set I look at and I see all the hours and time and energy and refinement and every version that went into it. And it's like the history of every individual card. I mean, every card is a story. But for me, it's really hard to choose. I think at this moment, I would tell you King Edgar, because it really embodies to me something that I was so happy with about the set. King Edgar has this ability where he does something else. He draws you cards for your artifacts. He has this other ability where if you flip a coin, you guarantee it comes up heads. And I love that ability because if you don't know Final Fantasy, you're like, what the heck is this? But if you know Final Fantasy, and even if you don't know Magic, you can read that and you're like, holy smokes, they perfectly captured the game mechanic from Final Fantasy. And that kind of like love letter to the fans, something I was so happy to get to put into the set over and over again. And that's on a number of different cards, but King Edgar really sticks in mind to me as something I wrote down and just kind of stuck the whole way through and people really enjoyed.
I imagine that you had so many ideas for this deck, and it would have been impossible to include absolutely everything in the Final Fantasy series. Is there a scene that you were like, man, it just didn't make sense to put this one in the deck? That you're like, I would have loved that scene, but it just didn't make sense.
There are some scenes, I would say, though, even more than individual scenes, the thing I feel the most about is individual characters. Scenes, there's a lot of iconic ones that they come and go, but people don't identify with a scene like they do a character, right? Everyone's got their favorite characters. And so there's some people that were left on the cutting room floor that I'm like, man, we had him, we talked about him, we had him in at one point. There ultimately just wasn't room. You're trying to cover 16 games, and there's only so much room in a set to build those cards, and you can't just have it all be legendary creatures, you know? But as like a 9 fan, we had to cut Aiko, which was like so hard for me because I love that character. We got her in art somewhere, and we often did a thing where if it didn't make it into the set, we got the character in art. And then there's some stuff from like Final Fantasy 5. Some of those characters we had to leave on the cutting room floor. Ferris is someone who I like loved and wanted to be able to get in to the game, but just didn't end up working out. So, there's plenty of material that we didn't quite get to, but I feel really happy with the amount that we did cover, even if we didn't get to everybody.
Oh, it's expansive. And I'm amazed at the attention to detail in all of it. I was telling one of my students who's into Magic and new to Final Fantasy, it's like you can almost recreate some of the stories by just looking at some of these cards from the basic games, especially in the Commander decks. I think specifically of Terra's Final Fantasy VI deck. You can really tell the whole story there. The Final Fantasy...
I was going to say, I think it's so beautiful, right? When we were working on these Commander decks, we had this idea of what if every deck was like a bespoke thing for that game? And it really told the whole story, or at least a piece of the story of that game. And you pick up those decks and you look at the cards and you start laying out the story moments in front of you. And man, that's really so darn cool.
Well, it's certainly true in the Commander decks, particularly how to do that. However... and you say you're on social media a lot, so I've got to kind of bring this up. Final Fantasy VII, we are in the midst of an ongoing saga where there's a lot of questions about Part 3. How intentional to spoilers and interpretations did your team have to be? Because there's a lot of thoughts out there when it came to the Final Fantasy VII specific cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so one thing that made our lives a little bit easier is we focused on the 16 mainline games, but we didn't do any of the side games, including Rebirth and Remake.
Okay.
So we got to basically dodge any outstanding questions about what's going to happen in the third part of that there.
There you go.
We all have our own theories, of course.
What is your wildest theory for Part 3? I just have to know.
What is my wildest theory for Part 3?
Or a theory for Part 3.
What I just think we should see such a deviation in the first 2 games. Like, it starts off as like, oh, we're going to walk down this game that I'm familiar with. And then you quickly realize we're doing something very, very, very different, right? We're hitting up something very different. And I couldn't tell you what's going to happen in the third part.
Of course.
But I really feel like we're going to end up in a very different place than we started. And I am very excited to find out what that is when we get there.
Terrific.
Yeah. So that's all I'll say on that. But because we didn't touch the side games, it made focusing on not having to deal with that a little bit harder. I was when it comes to spoilers, though, one thing we were very intentional about in working with Square Enix was not showing off too many game spoilers. Because even though these games are, some of them are 20, 30 years old, we knew this set would bring a lot of people to try those games out for the very first time, right? A lot of people came in through, of course, Final Fantasy players are coming in through this and trying out Magic, but it also worked the other way. A lot of Magic players are like, oh, this set is cool. I want to go try playing these games. And so we tried to do a lot where we could tell the story and show off iconic moments without giving everything away. I'll give you a great example, a card that I love. Sephiroth's Intervention. This is a card where you see Sephiroth plunging down with a sword in his hand. Now, if you know Final Fantasy VII, you know exactly what is about to happen underneath Sephiroth. You know perfectly who is going to get impaled and what is going to happen. But if you don't know, it's just Sephiroth with a sword. And we could have easily painted that to have it, they going through Aerith. But I think it's so much better that, like, if you know, and if you don't, you get to have that moment for the first time yourself, or not, as the case might be, if you're playing through the remakes. But it is very cool to get to experience that in Final Fantasy VII Original for the first time, and we wanted to preserve that for players. We couldn't do it in every case, Sometimes with the double-faced characters, we had to show off their transformation, But even then, it's just like Ultimisia to Ultimisia, not Adia to Ultimisia, right? So we try to preserve that where we could.
There is, in the Final Fantasy VII community, people are very passionate about their interpretations and all of that kind of stuff. And one card or series of cards probably got a lot more, at least on my Twitter feed, attention than others. And it was the Gold Saucer Date cards. Okay, so the Aerith, the Tifa, and then sure, Yuffie and how much?
Don't leave them out. Don't leave them out.
Yeah. How much intentionality was put into that? Because I have seen like calculus levels of angling and stuff, and the curvature of smiles and stuff. What kind of intentionality was in there? Because everybody's trying to say this is proof of one thing.
No.
One ship, right?
One true timeline. No.
The true ship. The ship to end all ships.
Were y'all aware of that as you were creating cards?
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that I think is so amazing about this set is out of all the sets I've ever worked on, this is basically the only one I've ever worked on where when we asked for something, we were just like, yeah, that sounds sick. Let's do it, right? And I want to give a big shout out to Zakeel Gordon, who was the project architect for this set, who kind of like had to, he interfaces with all the teams to make sure we get all the resources we need.
Yeah.
And he's also a huge Final Fantasy fan. And basically, anytime I asked him for something, I was like, hey, this is going to be sick. He was like, yeah, sounds sick. We should do it. So the 15 Sids is another example of this, right? I went to him and I was like, hey, what are we going to do about Sid? Wouldn't it be funny if we did 15? Haha, funny joke, right? And he's like, nah, sounds sick. Let's do it. And, it takes a lot of gusto to be like, yeah, we're going to spend 14 additional art pieces and get artists to paint 14 different things for one uncommon in the set. But it was worth for us to do, right? And in the case of the Secret Rendezvous with the 4 different versions, we are all Final Fantasy fans. We are all Final Fantasy fans ourselves. Yeah. Of a tongue twister there. And so, of course, we were going to argue about what the canonical date was because we knew we had to show off the date scene. And we're like, well, we can't just show one off. Because I'm like, well, clearly we all know it's Tifa. And Daniel's like, no. It's Aerith. We all agree it's Aerith. And we had this own little fight. And finally I was like, all right. Let's just do 4 versions. Let's split them up, make sure they're all there. So, fans of the series can have one for whatever they believe is the canonical one. And that's kind of thing you only really get when you have fans working on something like this, right? Because you have to really not only know it, but feel it to do that. Because it would be very easy to be like, whatever, people will be fine, just put one of them in there. But we know, we've had those discussions, we've had those debates, and we knew we needed to do a proper service to that moment. So I'm really glad we could make that happen.
So is Cloud smiling a little bit more in the Tifa card?
Don't confirm nor deny.
We'll never know. We know that the Final Fantasy deck is really successful. Can you give us a scope of how successful it has been for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, what I'll say about Final Fantasy is like, I think about things in terms of design successes because the set's going to go out and be successful and it's sold a lot. It was a huge hit for us. And that's great. But when I'm designing the cards, I'm not thinking about that. I want to think about is this fun? Are people going to enjoy it? And then is it going to come out? And are people going to enjoy it? Because ultimately, that's what matters to me as a designer the most, right? Are people having fun with this? Are we having fun? Back to that question. And by those metrics, like Final Fantasy was a huge hit. The people said the draft environment was one of their favorites of all time. Many of our top players were like, this might be one of the greatest draft formats Wizards has ever made. The individual cards and the fans for Final Fantasy getting into it and being like, wow, the flavor captures it perfectly. I mean, this conversation itself is proof of that. The Magic fans coming in and be like, wow, this set was really fun to play. I know nothing about Final Fantasy, but now I want to go play the games. It was really good. And so all that, both anecdotally and what we can capture in our data, shows there was a huge success on those metrics. And obviously, then you look at the hard metrics of like our play numbers are up. People are playing in tournaments, more tournaments than ever. On Arena, like tons of people are playing Magic the Gathering Arena. I think it was like the server crashed on the first day, which was like a not thing we expected to happen. And then, I think Chris Cox has talked a bit about how, I don't want to quote an exact number because I don't know exactly what he said, but he's talked about how it sold a ridiculous amount on the first day, right? Before the set even came out, it was beating Lord of the Rings, I think is something he said, something along those lines. So like it was really an amazing achievement on, company level. But for me as a designer, like I said, I'm focused on the design level where I think we knocked it out of the park and are already looking at this set. I was like, wow, what lessons can we take going forward from this?
I am wearing a Ramza pin today because you said that you did not do any of the side games. Is there a possibility we might see a Ramza one day?
Well, what I'll certainly say is the set was very successful. And so if we want to do another one, that would be an amazing opportunity. But certainly there's stuff we could cover. But right now I'm happy, basking in the success of this and enjoying it a little bit. And then we'll see what happens next, But this set took 5 years to make. So certainly I don't think it'll be anytime soon.
My final question for you really comes from Twitter. Okay. And it's not something that, it's not theory crafting, anything like that. But I just have to show this to you. Wizards of the Coast posted this picture or released this picture of the Chocobos, right? And there's just a cryptic message alongside it that says, stay tuned to MagicCon Atlanta for special announcement. Do you have any comments? Like, is there anything?
My comment is you should stay tuned to MagicCon Atlanta. Here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Yes, stay tuned to MagicCon Atlanta, which will be in the past by the time this comes out.
It will be.
So
it will be.
Go look it up online. But, when we announced all the Final Fantasy stuff earlier this year, we talked about how we had to be a holiday release and not really what that is. So I guess stay tuned. See what happens.
Gavin, a tease. I
perhaps
cannot.
It wasn't as final the set of a fantasy. So
I love that, Gavin. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. This has been I am more excited to play Magic now than even ever before, just because hearing your passion and the attention to detail is just really amazing, and also you're just a cool dude. So thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to all sitting down and playing a game together sometime. It'd be a lot of fun.
I would love that.
Let's do it.
I would love that. Evan, Nick, any closing thoughts before we head out?
I'll just say thanks so much for your time, and thanks for bringing the passion from the kitchen table growing up playing Magic all the way through into adulthood. I think we're very fortunate to have individuals like yourselves and your teams stewarding the game and our play experiences, and your efforts are not unnoticed, and it really means a lot to a lot of people. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, the love that went into some of these, especially Final Fantasy set, getting to experience that by proxy through Wade, who has no knowledge of any of this, and getting to watch those like light bulbs come on and the joy well up in them was a real treat. So yeah, thanks.
I think there's no greater testament to the power of this set and what Universe Beyond can do than what we're doing here, right? You would have not gotten the Magic not for this, and now we're here months later talking about the set. And you're excited for the next thing that the Magic has to offer, So it's great. I'm so glad you're in it now, Wade, and can't wait to play with you sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me anywhere you can find my name, basically. So you want to find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, X, TikTok, and of course you can find me on YouTube at Good Morning Magic, where I post videos about the design of Magic.
Fantastic. We will put all the links in the comments. Everybody go and like and subscribe to Gavin's channels and social media and stuff. Keep up with all things Magic. And for all things Final Fantasy, stay here. We've got a lot of Final Fantasy content coming up. Some Magic, some games, some lecture plays, you name it. We got a full fall semester, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being a part. Gavin, thank you, listener. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Until then, walk tall, my friends.
Bye, everybody.